do forgive me. I put it out within the cauldron by mistake. What the intro? I hope that's not a problem.
That's okay. That's okay.
This is Truthseekers Property, okay, and we have. I'd like to introduce my special guest. My name is Bradley Powers. I'm a mystic and a spiritual advisor, amongst many other things. And I'd like to introduce my co-host, Christopher Dunham, also known as Thunder. Christopher, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a good topic tonight.
And I also have special guest, Sherry Brett, who has known me for many years. Thank you for joining us, Sherry.
Hello.
Hello. How you
Merry
doing?
to you all. I'm okay, thank you.
And we have Nico in the house. Hi there, Nico. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
How you doing,
You're
brother?
welcome to show your face whenever you feel like it. No one's here to judge what you look like. Oh, there we have. Well, thank you for joining us. And we're going to be discussing spirituality and mental health. Is there a difference between spirituality, mental health, mental illness? And we could take that further than that. With there are other subjects. We have. I'm not here to dispute the policies that the medical health actually provide for us. Their policies, okay. We're not here to debunk. We're here to actually say, is there a difference between spirituality and mental health? How do we define the difference? Okay, because you've got shamans, clairvoyants, people out there are possessed, voice hearers, conduits, psychic mediums, spells, even rituals, even magic. And then we have schizophrenia, acute psychosis, other mental conditions such as acute ADHD and bipolar. And we have to take all into consideration. How do we tell the difference? Is it possible we are mentally ill, or is it possible we are blessed with phenomenal gifts, phenomenal experiences? So I'm going to go over to Sherry, because I believe Sherry might be able to help me out with some answers, because Sherry has been possessed before. Is that right, Sherry?
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us about your experience?
Well, first I would like to say, obviously, yes, I am spiritual, but I also suffer from mental health issues. I have borderline personality disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder, and I'm not afraid to say it. It is a part of my life. I have got to understand and know the difference between my spirituality and when I'm having my mental health breakdown. With possession, just like mental health, it can open and start over a period of time. But the difference between mental health is even though sometimes we do not feel that we're in that control with our mental health, there are aspects to it that is controlled, and we can find ways to get through that. And this is through medical help and through professional help, and by believing in yourself. Where with possession, yes, again, it can be something that happens over time, but I found that the possession side of it is completely different to what I've gone through mental health side. Obviously, in this situation, I was in a house, I was doing a cleansing, and through doing this cleansing was when I was possessed through landing in an area I shouldn't have landed in. And even though, like in some mental health illnesses, they'll say that you hear voices, you might see things and stuff, it is completely different to having a possession. I have got to know the difference between voices speaking to you from the spirit side and a voice of mental health going on with me. Now, am I somebody that... It's hard to define it, because a lot of what we experience spiritually is put down to being mental health, even though it's not, because a lot of it can be very similar. But I've found that through having my mental health, it's actually made me a stronger person and more understanding of my spirituality, because I know my emotions and my feelings when I'm feeling low, when I'm feeling depressed. I don't hear voices when I have my depression and my illness. I just get feelings and I get emotional. I start thinking silly things, which I shouldn't. where when it's my spiritual side and it's trying to talk to me, I find that my spiritual side is trying to be more positive, where my mental health side can be quite negative. It will say and make me feel in negative ways, where with my spirituality it does the opposite. They're trying to guide me to get through it. They're trying to give me advice. So I very much can tell the difference. It's hard to explain it, and it's such a topic for you to come up with, Bradley, because we're going to sound a bit tongue twisted because we are trying to explain the best that we can. But if anyone come up to you and says to you, do not talk to people that are supposedly spiritual but also have mental health conditions, please don't listen to that, okay? Because we're still human, we're still people, and we're still very capable of knowing what's right and wrong and what we're experiencing. That's all I'm going to say to you. But possession is not like having mental health breakdown. Possession is a completely different ball game. You do not need to be exorcismed when you're having a nervous breakdown. You do when you're having a possession. So that's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Very informative, and it's a pleasure to listen to you, Sherry. And you speak from experience as well, which that is worth a lot in itself. So you know what
Yeah.
you're talking about. You don't. They're not your opinions; they're your experiences. So thank
They
you.
are my experiences, and I don't regret having any of it. Yes, like the things I've gone through in life have messed my life up. But if I didn't go through these things in life, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And for that reason, I
Yeah.
love my mental health. Do I love living with it all the time? No, but I respect it. I respect the fact that those problems have caused me some issues, and I try not to let that affect me in life. I'm not saying that's always successful, but most of the time I am in control.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I like what you said about that. I would never suspect you of having mental health issues, and yet you come across as perfectly normal. The way you present yourself, you're in control of your life, and you know, life can be a struggle anyway for all of us. And like you seem to have it leveled out, and you sound very grounded to me as well. And I
I
admire
am
that.
very grounded and I am very connected. That definitely. And I'm not going to say that my mental health makes me any less of a person than what I am, because it doesn't. If anything, I've found through having my mental health, it's made me so much more connected to my spiritual side, because it's my spiritual side that gets me through the darkness and gets me through the struggle. So my mental health's helped me to be more spiritually inclined and to be more spiritually open and responsible for my actions and my ways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Nico, would you like to share your views regarding, is there a thin line between spirituality and mental health? We have a wide construct of a field of clairvoyant psychic mediums out there, and then you have psychiatrists that are saying that they don't really believe we speak to spirits. They believe it's a form of mental illness such as schizophrenia. And schizophrenia is an umbrella word which can cover many things. How do you view this subject, Nico?
It's kind of a tricky subject, but for me, mental illness can affect somebody's spirituality, and I want to start with that um, you can be mentally ill and have a flourishing spiritual practice or religious practice that is not negatively impacted by your mental health. But there's also the flip side of that, which is spiritual psychosis. And that is a kind of, well, we know what psychosis means. It is, um, the seeing and hearing things that aren't there. And there's a multitude of conditions that can cause people to be inclined to spiritual psychosis. Um, which I'm sure we'll get to in a bit. But for me, I do believe that there is kind of a fine line, because you have your spiritual beliefs and like the higher power, and that goes as far as clairvoyance, seeing spirits, angels, things like that. Um, and depending on who you talk to, like I could talk to one of my spiritual friends about things like that, but if I go talk to a random person about that, are they going to think I'm absolutely bonkers? Yes. And it's kind of a matter of perspective. And at least for me personally, is this impacting your life in a negative manner? And if so, seek proper guidance. If you, and there's absolutely no shame in seeking therapy, seeing a psychiatrist, anything along those lines, or having any mental health diagnosis. Um, Everybody has. My psychiatrist had a fantastic statement that there's so many people that are undiagnosed with mental health conditions that will never seek treatment because they do not suffer at a level in which they feel needs help. It doesn't impact their life enough, or they've developed coping skills that help them to the point that they do not need medication or intervention, though there are people that do.
Yeah.
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 And I also want to make the disclaimer of if you're a spiritual person and somebody in the spiritual community tells you to stop taking your medication because it blocks your sensitivities or anything like that, it's a crock of BS. Please don't stop taking your medication. It does not hinder you in any manner on those regards. And that is a very dangerous statement for somebody to make.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember, we're not doctors. So
No.
if you go to a doctor, stay with the doctor. Take anything that we say with a grain of salt, but at the same
Absolutely.
time, do pay attention. We're not doctors. I want to make sure everybody knows that we
Oh,
are
yeah.
not doctors.
No, I firmly believe that, like, if you have spiritual advisors, spiritual leaders, that you should work with them and your medical team, especially for things like mental health. It's great to have the support across both sides. But I would never tell somebody to drop medical for anything spiritual. And even with my own, when I do cleansings and things like that, I make sure that if I even have the inkling that somebody's having a mental health issue or spiritual psychosis, that I try to get them through the proper channels to deal with that first before we even attempt to do a cleansing, because I don't want to hurt somebody's mental health
or spiritual psychosis.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Mark Brown from the audience and a member of the Psychic Roundtable, Mystic Roundtable, is saying that without a belief in the supernatural, there are no religions as to what we define as acts of the gods are in fact the supernatural or paranormal. And the very belief in an afterlife is a belief in the supernatural or paranormal. It's about perceptions. And we have to consider that some psychiatrists do not believe in the afterlife, do not believe it is possible for spirits to talk to you. So we have to take that into consideration. Everyone would go to visit a psychiatrist, but have they ever considered that there are parapsychologists that can also help you and hypnotherapists that can also help you as well? There are other forms of therapy as well as psychiatrists, and we should take everything that they say with an open mind, take it on board, and evaluate their faults because that's their professional opinion, and we have to work out what is best for us and what other therapists are saying to us. What do you think, Christopher?
Well, I go to a psychiatrist, through the VA. I go through see a psychiatrist. And do I take medicine for my mental ailment, PTSD? Yes. Do I need that medication? Yes, because it slows down my thought process. Not because how can I say this? It's not that I'm crazy. It's just that my life experiences, being a soldier and stuff like that, has taught me you got to think 3 times faster than the next person. You got to be on top of everything. The stresses of, of watching what happens and what evolves during wartime does play a hard, how can I say this? It was hard on my thought process. I can never slow down after that. It's like I got to go, I got to be doing this and that. And now it's like I realize that mentally I do need help. I'm a third initiate, and
Yeah.
spirituality has helped me slow down.
Mhm.
It has taken the anger away from me. But has my thought process slowed down? No. And that's where I rely upon spirituality to help me through. For me, my spiritual life is very real. Am I crazy? Well, I hope not, because everything that I'm experiencing spiritually with my coven mates is very real. They're experiencing it too. They're seeing the same things that I'm seeing. They're feeling the same thing that I'm feeling. So am I crazy because I have these magical experiences? That's the big question is, are we really crazy because we chase after a goddess or a god, that we feel that is tangible to us? People are going to have to experience that to find out.
But I've always said, like, what is crazy? Crazy is only what people have named in society.
Yeah.
Our world, our experiences are our own, and if we go to the other side and we realize that everything we've experienced is completely different, it's still something that was spiritually open, something that got us through life, something that supported us and helped us the way that we needed to be helped. Do I think that we're crazy? No. But what is the aspect of crazy? Crazy is only a word that people use to describe people that are not always to how they're expected to be. When in reality, who's really crazy? Are we crazy because we're open, or are the ones that are not open crazy? What is crazy? Does crazy really exist, or is it just is something that's described in many things?
I find that a lot of people, to me, that are what I would call crazy, are the people who actually get angry because of the religious or psychosis of the meeting of the two, because they'll look at me and say, "You're going to hell." No,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
That's what I'm saying. The opposite to us.
They'll get angry when you deny the fact to them that, hey, I find that people outside of our belief system get really angry because you deny a singular God is due. It's not that I deny it. It's just that I found it, I wouldn't say an easy way to make that connection with the divine. It is a way for me to communicate and experience the divine versus the person who doesn't. And they have the psychosis of, you're crazy, you're doing this. And I'm viewing them like, why are you getting so angry for? I'm sitting there going, hey, I love you, man. Peace and love and chicken grease, everything will slide into place here. Take your time. But I find a lot of people get angry over spirituality really quick. And I see those people who get angry as the ones with the real mental problems.
Yeah. The ones that are opposite
with each other. What would you say to that, Nico?
I agree with that. I mean, there's a stigma with both, which is unfortunate. That there's still a large stigma with mental health and psychiatric care, and with people who deviate from the norm in like any sense of the word, especially in the spiritual communities, where if you, and it stems from a lack of understanding, where if you are not educated or a part of those communities, you're going to look at it and be like, I don't know what these people are doing. They're weird. It's wrong. And from somebody in the community, I think that's sad. And while we don't proselytize as pagans and witches and spiritualists, like, we always leave the door open to educate people. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, is that Well, I'm not going to go out there and shove it down somebody else's throat. I definitely leave the door open for when people have questions and to have healthy conversations about things. Because maybe you'll change their worldview.
Yeah.
Mark Brown from the audience, member of the Mystic Roundtable, said it would be unprofessional and egocentric for a psychologist to impose their own beliefs upon a client, as one's belief in religion is a personal choice and a right. Thank you for that, Mark Brown. You had to take in consideration you've got parapsychologists as well. They're very open-minded, and they wouldn't impose any rights upon you or beliefs. They are parapsychologists. They're quite open-minded as well, from what I understand.
Yeah.
To be honest, so are psychologists. Psychologists are fine. I've had psychology and all of that sort of stuff. I went to a lot of doctors that didn't understand me, didn't make me feel that I was getting the help that I needed. But the last doctor that I had was absolutely amazing and very professional at what she done. She never ever like judged me or criticized me. She listened to everything that I said. I even asked her, "Am I going crazy?" She said, "No, you're not crazy. You're very, very sane, Sherry." She goes, "You just got a few issues because of your past." And she helped me to get through that. And I would speak openly to her about my experiences, my spirituality. And she never, ever once turned around and told me that she thought I was crazy and imagining it. And she'd actually admitted that she had a spiritual side. She believed in the afterlife and she believed that there are people out there that can do that. And only because I was able to sit there and say something about one of her grandparents in front of her that I'd have never known from Adam. So that kind of made her at me as well. But I was always, I never felt like I could open to my other doctors, but I did to her. And that's why I think it is important. Never ever step away from your doctors, never step away from your medical profession. When you are going through mental problems and you're involved, like Nico said, with spiritual people, they should never ever tell you not to seek medical help, because you're still going to need medical help in some situations. And we're not doctors, we're just here to give you advice, give you information, and anyone that is professional in this space will turn around and say to you to seek medical help as well. So, and we all do that. We always say we're not doctors, and if there is any problems that are ongoing and becoming troubling, go to your doctor, because not in any shape or form would we turn around and say a doctor does not know what they're doing. We know that they do, because we use them ourselves when we have to. So there you go.
Yeah, that's right. Always be open-minded and to take on board any information shared with you from a doctor, therapist, psychiatrist. And also there are other forms of therapy, such as parapsychologists, psychologists, hypnotherapists, even hypnotists can do the most amazing of things. And so we have to take those into consideration. They're not, those extra therapists are not free. We have to pay for their services. However, they still have valid information to share with you, because we have to take into consideration the psychiatrist might be an atheist, that's possible, or they get their information from books. Although, like, for them to decipher schizophrenia, what is schizophrenia? Schizophrenia is an umbrella word which can define various forms, like split personalities, voice hearing, alter egos, different personalities, really. I've spoken to someone who has 7 personalities in them, and that was schizophrenia. And so we have to take into consideration that maybe our psychiatrist may be right, or we may not like what they hear. But we also we are welcome to make choices and get involve more therapists in our treatment from other directions. So we have to take that into consideration as well.
Yeah, definitely. You know, the last time I went to a therapist, I sat down, I was talking to her, and, you know, I opened up about, you know, my spiritual self and how my spiritual side seems more sane than my mundane life. And she just kind of looked at me and she goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "I retain my spiritual teachings, what I've learned throughout my life about God, versus what I do with the mundane. It seems like my memory, with the mundane is going away. But my spiritual side sticks with me like glue. And I looked at her and I go, am I going crazy? And she goes, define crazy. I'm like, she goes, can you? And I go, no, not really. You know, because what is crazy? I've never really experienced it, you know?
Exactly.
And you know, what I see as sameness may be crazy to another. And Sherry, you stepped on that, you know, topic briefly. What is being sane? What is being sane? Who hasn't been scarred in his life, you know, to a point where they feel like they're going schizo, but are they actually, or is these things that we're experiencing a natural order of life for us? You know, it's like a person who's schizophrenic. I knew a friend who sat there all day long. I see him in the woods, Chris. Here's the photos. And he would show me these photos. And I'm looking at them going, you're not going crazy. These are earth spirits. And he's like, no, no, no. They're from the CIA, the FBI. And I'm like, Bill, come on. These are earth spirits. What you're seeing is legit. The pictures that he was showing me were legit. But he was taking it to another paranoid, what I would call a paranoid side of his mental capacity. You know, the cops don't care if he was smoking weed down his trailer along this creek. You know, really, they didn't. And he was just all paranoid and stuff for no reason. But it was driving, you could literally watch his mental state decline because of this. You know, he would be really happy 1 minute, then he would hit that hill where he hit the peak of happiness, and all of a sudden he would be on that roller coaster going downhill, and all hell was breaking loose for him. You know, where he would mentally get angry, scared. You know, the fear factor was playing in. What do you tell a person like that? You know, and I'm sitting there trying to be a friend, but at the same time, I'm a priest too. So, you know, I'm trying to help them along. And I suggested, hey, why don't you go see a doctor? Oh, all they want to do is give me drugs. And I'm like, yeah, but Bill, even through the drugs, it will help you slow down so that you could think before you spiral out of control. You know, and he became argumentative. I've had a few friends like that where, you know, where I come from, drugs are very prevalent, meth. And every one of those people who sit there and spent long periods of time doing this drug have mental problems. You know, same way with LSD. Did LSD and he'd pop every pill that you can imagine. Oh, what's this do? What's this do? And what happened to him? The mental went downhill. The fantasy from real, what I would say mundane to spiritual, just went out of whack on him. But who am I? Because I'll sit there, I'll tell you, oh, I believe in fairies. I've seen fairies. I have walked with the goddess. I have walked with God. So who am I to sit there and look at these individuals and say, hey, you're just going batshit crazy. Excuse my language. You're just going crazy. You're all right. You know, just chill out a little bit so everybody around you can approach you. You know, what do you tell a person that is having a mental breakdown?
Yeah, that's right. Mark Brown is saying from the audience, having been a psychic, a psychologist, a psych counsellor at Peninsula Behavioural Health Hospital for 2 years running, SCU, or Special Care Unit, it is my opinion that all people have quirks and are wired up differently. Our beliefs are our own and our individual right, whereas if we were all the same, this world would be a very boring place. I have seen there is a very fine line between genius and insanity. In those pursuits, the norms created and make the great discovery in humanity. Excuse me. Who's hiding under a bed will never find greatness. Yes, you're hiding. I'll never find greatness.
Yeah.
And Einstein, he got sent home from school. He was beyond teachable. They said they couldn't teach him. He didn't have the minerals to be taught anything. So they sent him home from school. He couldn't tie his own shoelaces or anything. And look at him, he became a genius. That was Einstein.
Yeah.
Then we got voice hearers. Gandhi was a voice hearer. He allegedly spoke to God, and he took India back from Britain, and he did that, hearing the voices in his head, which came from God, and no one ever said that he was insane or mentally ill. That was taken grounded, that his words were binding. Anthony Hopkins, the famous Welsh actor, when he was at school, he said he was a voice hearer. And Joan of Arc, she was a voice hearer, and she led France to many battles, victories against Britain. So maybe the Battle of Agincourt might have been one of them. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But the thing is, there are people, voice hearers as well, who have performed many great things, great tasks, that the psychiatrists would say were mentally ill, suffering schizophrenia with acute psychosis. Yeah, it just goes to show you what you can achieve as a voice hearer. I am a voice hearer myself, 25 years or 27 years. I've been a voice hearer. The first 8 years, I didn't understand the voice. And I said to the spirits, am I going insane? And they said to me, no, you're not. Believe it or not, I asked the spirits for advice, and they said, I'm not going insane. Yeah, I heard a voice and for 8 years. And I recognise now it's parapsychology, the voice, and it was a genuine living entity. However, then I had a 4-year gap of peace, tranquility, sanctuary for 4 years, and then I got this other voice come along, this other entity that entered me, and I've had to deal with him ever since, and I haven't discovered a way to rid myself of him. And the psychiatrists, they struggle with the fact that other spirits can talk to you. They struggle with the fact there's life after death. I'm not saying all psychiatrists, I'm just generalising on the psychiatrists that I've met. They don't believe in life after death. They don't believe the spirits can talk to you. So they label me as schizophrenia. And I can't deny it. I can't deny their verdict. I can't write it off. Even though I've had a lot of spiritual, phenomenal experiences in my life, I still can't write off their verdict. However, I'm going to see a hypnotherapist and get a different verdict from a different direction and see what they say.
Yeah.
It's amazing that your spiritual gifts or your spiritual experiences can begin when you are born. You could be blessed or cursed, or when you reach puberty, when you have a car accident, when you're in a trauma. All this can bring on psychic phenomena in your life, and you can become psychic just by a few of those that I've mentioned. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. It seemed like after I lost my hand, it became a thirst for me. The thought of God, is Christ, what is the truth here, about, am I going through what I'm going through because of a punishment of God, or what I am going through is a punishment because of what my forefathers did before I was born, or what I ever did in a past life. What is happening to me? It drove me literally almost crazy, to, how can I say it, the negative side of spiritualism and being mentally on a negative. How is this coming together? How can I deal with this? Because I've seen people die, not because of combat, but because being a witch, sometimes your services are required to give somebody their last rites, and you're watching them take their last gasp, and you're blessing them. And sometimes it's people that that you don't know. And it does affect you mentally. But on the same turncoat, we have to look at ourselves individually, what we go through in our personal lives with our family, watching them go through mental breakdowns and coming back. Where is God? Is he really real?
Yeah.
To me, he is.
That's a good question, Chris. Do you know what I say? You're going to laugh when I say this. is it possible, right, that God put a curse on me?
Well,
I mean,
you
is
know,
it?
this is the way I look at life. When we are born, we accept from God, from Goddess, from the Holy Divine, no matter how you see it, whether it's through Christ or whatever. We do accept a life challenge to complete certain aspects for our spirit to transform to a greater being, to become more lighted, to become more illuminated, no matter how you say it. And we are charged with that acceptance of I want to experience life.
I wouldn't say that we're cursed.
No,
We're lessened. We are lessened.
Yeah.
We are here to learn lessons. We are here to learn lessons to grow
Exactly.
and to be our true self.
You know, it's like I was saying, Sherry, you know, we're given this life and we have to make the best of it, no matter what is thrown at us. Whether we're
And at the end of the day, when bad things happen to people, it's so easy to blame the higher energy or to say that they're not there, when in reality the things we go through in life is just life. It's the way that it is. Sometimes some of the things that happen is unfair. We can't reprehend why it's happened, or why would God let that happen. But it's not God letting that happen, it's the way of life. There are things that they cannot put themselves into and be involved. They can only help you so far. And a lot of how we tread paths, how we choose to do things in life, is what really represents how we're going to end up. Like, yeah, younger children, things like that, I think that's a bit different when we lose kids and stuff like that. I just think that they outgrow their spirit in the human body very, very quickly, because they were already very forward. In that way, I think that, you know, with children it's a different thing, but for us adults and young adults, when we pass, it's as hard as it is to let go. That was their time. And I know that some of the situations can be really cruel. Some of the things that happen to people are really nasty, and that's not the work of the divine. What you got to remember is, in our world, we all have the mind to make a action on what we want to do. They do not manipulate us in that way, tell us what we should and shouldn't do. They guide us, they help us, they give us aspects and signs and things to try and keep us on the right path. Is if we choose to watch that and to follow that and to be true to our heart. And, you know, like my mum, for instance, I prayed for my mum when she was dying. I watched my mum dying. I prayed for my mum every day. I got on my knees and I begged for her not to be in pain anymore. I'm still suffering. It's only been 7 months. I had to look after her and care for her and things like that. And all of that was because of a habit not made by God, but made by mankind. God produced his plants. Humans decided to make that plant into something poisonous that makes us unhealthy. And that's why my mum lost her life, because when she was given the advice to stop, she didn't at that time, because she thought she had longer in her, and she started to become very sick because of it. And there were times I wanted to scream at God. I wanted to scream at the goddesses, going, look at all the work that I do for you. Look at everything that I've given to you. Look at everything I've had to sacrifice. And you take the one thing that was keeping me going. But I didn't, because it wasn't them. They took her away from the suffering. Those words that I said on my knees, please, please, because they loved me that much, they helped my mum.
yeah. I'm really sorry about your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to say, like, it's so easy to blame other things, when in life it's reality. And sometimes the decisions that people make the decision of what's going to happen in life. That's why we always say, tread your path, walk with it with honor, do the best, be the best that you can, be kind, be loving, be nice. You want to know that you're coming out of this world a great person. Okay. And my mum was a great person. The only downfall is that she liked her cigarettes.
Yeah.
And
Same
that's
way
what
with
killed
me.
her. You know.
That's what almost killed me. You know, it's
And
like
it wasn't God that done that. That was made by the hands of human. You know, you get all these plants that God gave us, and then you decide to put substances and things into it. That's very contagious and very nasty to us. So
Yeah.
you can't blame God for the way somebody's mind's been made to be to make money. You know, and
I
make
say it's God's
you know.
will. It is what it is. It's God's will.
God can't be in control of everything. Even though God is the true creator of everything, God cannot save every life. God cannot make every decision. Some decisions are made by us, by how we act. And as much as God wants to save you, sometimes he can't because you've stepped that barrier, that time.
Yeah.
And it, you know, there
It's
is
that
no
free
turning
will
back.
choice. You
Well, that
know?
comes
Yeah.
into free will, and as a pagan, like the embodiment of death is viewed as a separate entity, deity to the other gods who work for the creation, and not always in an antithesis, but um, in a lot of the mythologies, the gods of death are not controlled by the others. So
No,
it comes to a point where even in some mythologies, like Norse mythology, the gods are not immune to death. They're
no.
resistant. They're emboldened by magical apples. But if you take those apples away, they shrivel and suffer like everybody else. And that's why I
I'm glad
like
that
the
you said that,
mythology
Nico.
is that
I'm glad you said
even
that.
the Norse gods are susceptible to true death, and that's kind of the one common denominator with us as humans and living on the mortal plane and everything is that the one true factor that we have in life is that we all slowly march towards the end,
Yes.
and that I think that you build into your life, if you believe in reincarnation, that you build multiple exit points for yourself, um, and that depending on your own free will and this path that you've built for yourself in the divine, things can change. You may go sooner, you may last longer, um, but it will happen inevitably.
Yeah.
And as awful and unfortunate as it is, but as spiritualists, we have this understanding that the afterlife exists, and while they're not physically here with us, they are still around. I
Yeah.
always tell people heaven's got visiting hours. You'll smell your mom's perfume, or you'll be driving in the car and you'll hear a song and think of them, and that's one of the most beautiful things I think about spirituality is that like there's not
Yeah.
an there's not a true end to it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people mentally they have this psychosis that when we die, we're going to be punished. I don't believe that we're punished when we die, no matter who we are. Is that we're thrown out to the picture of life again here in this mundane plane, and we had to try to relive and take those lessons that's thrown at
Yeah.
us and evolve into a better spirit
Hmm.
so that
Yeah.
we can transcend to the great spirit or divine spirit, however we see it. A lot of people, they don't understand that, and it drives them crazy. It really
Yeah.
does. And that's unfortunate. That's part of our society, the way that we have taught each other about spirituality, where like me and you, all of us here, we could sit there and say, you're not going to go to hell. But how do you tell somebody who's been indoctrinated so severely by beliefs that tell them that they're going to go to hell? How can you tell them just before their deathbed, God's already forgiven you for your transgressions in this life. He forgave you before you did the wrong thing. You made the wrong choice. And a lot of people don't recognize that. They say, oh, I never had that chance to ask for forgiveness from so-and-so. Well, maybe not. But you also have to realize that mentally, before you pass over that, you've already been forgiven. It's whether you forgive yourself so that you can get a mental peace in your spirit, in your head, before you pass, or even throughout your life. We have to take time to mentally say, I am sorry. Say to yourself, I am sorry for what I've done in my life. I may not get forgiveness or receive the forgiveness from a person or an animal or whatever. We have to take time out for our mental stability to forgive ourselves. I have found that because I've done a lot of egregious things to people. I thought I was tough man when I was younger, and I did a lot of things to hurt people physically. And you have to sit there and look at those people and say, I'm sorry, whether they do it or not. But most of all, you have to forgive yourself, so that you can have that mental break.
I view it as I'm repenting on my sins now. I was a sinner when I was younger. I wasn't a bully as such, but I did used to defend myself, and I would use violence to defend myself. And I like boxing. It wasn't a problem for me. However, I'm a shadow of my former self now, and I think that I'm putting something back into the community by helping people to help others. I'm like a teacher. I show someone in the library and they choose the books. That's how I like to present it. And if they choose religion as their path, I haven't got a problem with that. No. And I'm repenting my sins now. I'm putting something back into the community, which I didn't do when I was younger. And so I'm being suffering for my sins, I guess. You could look at it like that.
Yeah. I think a lot of us need to take time out and just kind of reflect. Are we really that bad? Or is what the neighbor's saying to us, here's a crazy old witch, get rid of those damn cats or whatever. Are we really that bad? Because usually the most people that I know who follow a spiritual path, whether it's heathenism, paganism, or, being a witch, they're the first ones to come to a person's side and say, here's a blanket, here's a pillow. This will get you through the night. Hey, you can come in and sleep on my couch. No matter what the situation is, or if they need financial help. Usually, somebody has that extra money, they can give it to that individual. Or if they need to go to a hospital or to a psychiatrist, guess what? We're usually the first ones that says, yeah, I'll take you to the doctor. I have no problem taking you to a doctor to seek help. We also give spiritual guidance, but we have to remind ourselves we are not doctors at all. So, we have to tread lightly when we give advice. We try to steer the person to, this is what I would do if I was you in your predicament. A lot of people don't realize that, a lot of us have been through these problems that these individuals are going through. Oh, go to a doctor, man. You're feeling bad. You're feeling sick in the head. Please go to a doctor. I would highly recommend it. It does
I think the doctor's most concerned about you visiting him, claiming you're a voice hearer, or you might be experiencing parapsychological attack from another spirit. Is suicide? Are you suicidal? I think that's his main concern actually with your welfare. Is are you suicidal?
At the VA, they constantly ask me that. How you doing? Do you think that you're going to kill yourself or something like that? Well, no, that isn't my problem. I don't want to leave life. I want to live life. But there are people that they are suicidal and they do need help. What drives a person to suicide? There's more reasons than we could count.
There are people that walk around this planet saying to themselves, kill me, kill me, kill me. For some people, this realm is like heaven. For some people, this realm is like hell, a living hell, and they don't want to be here. I know loads of people that want the aliens to come and take them away from this planet. That's amazing, isn't it? That's a wish they wish to come true.
Yeah, Bradley, there's times where I'm in so much pain that I wish the gods would come and take me away.
I'm sorry to hear
Seriously,
that.
I get in so much pain. It's not that I want to take my life. I just wish that they would come and end my life so that I won't suffer no more through pain. And a lot of people don't realize that with me. They see me and I speak about spirituality, witchcraft. We make this great connection, but they don't realize that right now, I'm in pain. But I
Yeah.
take the time out. I try to ground myself enough. And I try to use magic to try to cope with pain. And mentally, it is draining. Where it's like 63 or not, I've had
I'm
enough.
sorry to hear that. I'm going to read something. Jim Andre, the legendary Jim Andre, is in the house with us right now. And he's got a view he'd like to share with us. Thank you for joining us, Jim Andre. It's been a long time since me and Jim Andre have connected. If death is the debt for sin, Jim says we die just as innocent as when born. I'll read that again. Jim Andre says if death is the debt for sin, we die just as innocent as when born.
Yeah.
That's a fair point.
Death should be a beautiful thing. Honestly, it should be. That's where we should all jump up and rejoice because our loved one has got to have a privilege that we don't remember. Stepping into the divine, being able to go to the other side, the other realm of existence. And sometimes we forget that. It's not about, oh, poor them. We should rejoice for them because one, they're free from the shackles of pain. And they are walking with God and Goddess. They're lucky. If we really look at it, we should be cheering them on. Hard as sometimes that is because of our misunderstanding of the afterlife. And that's exactly what I'm going to call it, the misunderstanding of the afterlife. Sometimes we don't realize what we have on the other side.
Mark Brown says
I think it's both ways there because I'm spiritually open, but I've struggled with losing my mum, and it's not because I don't understand my spiritual side and where we go. It's the natural way of being human. When you've grown and lived with someone all your life, and suddenly that absence is there, that is the pain. You're happy they're out of the suffering. I'm happy my mum's out of her suffering, but it's getting used to not having that energy around in that way anymore. Like, yes, I still feel her, I still sense her, I know when she's here when I'm not feeling well. I know that, but it's not the same as having your mum's real arms around her. You get what I'm saying? It's completely different.
Yeah.
It's not wrong to feel I'm just saying that some people that go through these emotions are very open to the spiritual side. It's just life. We would, if I say that if we didn't feel this way, we never loved in the first place.
Yeah.
It's love.
Yeah. I have the same feelings about my father. My father was my best friend, and I didn't realize it until after he died. It's one of those things that kind of stick with you. And it took.
I know, don't get me wrong. I loved my mum, but I didn't realize how much I'd struggle without her because she'd always made me a really strong person. So it's really hard adapting to life and being different. And she would always be my run-to with my mental health. She would always know when I weren't okay. She's not that voice anymore to say, Sherry, what are you thinking? What are you doing? And that's what I miss. That's what I need. But just recently, the last week or so, I've been really quiet because I've been suffering really bad with my mental health. I'm not going to lie to all of you guys. I haven't been feeling great and I haven't been doing very good. But I have been feeling my mum's energy a lot more. And I still every now and again get that scream in my head, Sherry, don't even think about it, I'll kick your butt. That's my mum over and over, you know what I mean? Like, so they are there, guys. It's just feeling and listening, and it's okay to hurt. Hurt is pain. Pain is love. Okay, it shows you loved, and that's not something to be ashamed of. And am I going to say it's going to get any easier? It doesn't get easier when you lose people you really love. You just learn to carry on. But you know, I've been in situations. I remember being at the hospital with my mum and with these ladies in her room. All of them were on their deathbeds. A lot older than me, and they were sitting there. They could obviously see I was spiritual and stuff, and my mum was bragging about me all to the ladies. So when I came in, they were all just sitting there, and you know, all of them turned around and said, "What's going to happen to us when we die, Sherry?" I said, "You're going to go to a beautiful place. Everything that you've done and anything that you regret even now," I said, God, your divine, whoever it is that you believe in, has already forgiven you for that. When you go there, it'll be a clean slate. Yes, you will be shown things you made mistakes in. You will be learned how to be certain ways. You'll be learned how to be truly you again. I said, and you may come back. I said, but you're going to go to a world where you're not suffering anymore, where you'll be happy. You'll see all the people that you've loved and you've lost. I said, you're going to see the higher power. You're gonna suddenly remember all of the things you've ever done all through all of your lives. I said, you're going to a beautiful place. Don't fear it. Allow it to come to you. It's taking you to your savior. And they just smiled at me and they go, we feel so much more like at ease about it. So we're not going to get like judged and put into it. I said, no. God knows what you've done. God knows the problems and the mistakes. And now you've tried to change your life and make the difference. God is a forgiving person. And they were like, yeah. I said, and God will speak to you. God will say where you went wrong, but God will always love you. So do not fear going over. God is waiting. And they were just like, even my mum's not religious. My mum's a witch like me, but even my mum sat there and was like, I'm really starting to believe that even more now. And you do find that a lot of people that would never speak about that sort of thing, when they get near to the end, they're like, that's when I start really thinking, oh my God, I'm actually going over there. What's going to happen to me? Have I done things right? Have I made them proud? Suddenly, everything that didn't matter to them in life becomes something that matters to them. So you see a lot of them doing prayers every day, asking for forgiveness because they know they're going to this other place. I said, look, you've already been forgiven. It's good to say sorry. It's good to show your repentance. It really helps. I said, but you're already forgiven. You're God's children. Remember that. You're the divine's children. I said, and you having your life taken as such as it's going to be hard for us as your families, we're going to get that peace knowing that you're not going to be suffering anymore. And God's taken you because he loves you and because he doesn't want to see you suffering either. And I said, when we cry, when we suffer, when we have pain, the divine are the same. We are all connected. They just show it in a different way. You know what I mean? But they do get affected by what happens to us, and they love you, and you're not going to hell. You're going to a beautiful place. Don't fight it. Allow it to come.
It's amazing how, you know, like for me, watch one of my friends who was dying, and I went to go visit him. So, you know, he only had like 12 hours left to live, but he was so strong. And he was so spiritual. He was not the same person that I knew when we was younger. And how spiritual he became. And he looked at me and he goes, Chris, I'm ready to go see God. And he started preaching Christ at me. And I looked at him and I go, Christ is already with me. I've already been washed in his blood. God has already forgiven me for my past transgressions. Then I looked at him, I go, Lonnie, the biggest thing is you need to forgive yourself. And to watch that relief on his face when I spoke those words to him, mentally it helped him. But can you imagine what a person's going through mentally when they realize I only got a few hours left on this world?
Yeah, they start going crazy, thinking about a lot of things.
Yeah.
They do.
And this individual that I'm talking about, it really astounded me how strong he was in his faith. And when I got up to go, he gave me a hug. He goes, I love you. And thank you for being my friend. But that hug,
Yeah.
when he gave it to me, it was like it was magical. You could feel that energy, that positive energy of love just wrap around me. And I'm like, whoa, because I've never experienced a hug like that. It wasn't like he was giving me the hug, but it was like, how can I say it? God give me the hug. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
You could tell he was on the threshold of dying. It's hard, walking away from him saying, I love you and I will see you again. Mental. How do you deal with that stuff mentally? Because we're the ones that has to continue on living, and we have to deal with it. We have to deal with our parents dying. We have to deal with our friends dying. We have to deal with the people that are strangers. And, most of us see that, where a stranger did something that they shouldn't have, drinking, driving, doing drugs or whatever. How do we mentally facilitate watching these individuals die, loved and unloved? How do we discern in our mental capacities? Is this right? Is this wrong? How do we do with the emotion? For me, it's a struggle. Being a priest, I've gone to the VA before, and I have administered to people who were dying, or sitting down with the family, making that life struggle of, should we take off life support? Shouldn't we? What is the right answer for this individual? Do they
I
have?
don't think that this sort of thing's ever an easy thing to have to face, and there is never really a word or a way to get out of it. It's something that us as spiritual people have to face. I've had people come to me when people are getting near to end of life. Some of the people I've actually helped have been people I know, my mum being one of them. It's very emotional, and especially when you're very connected to them. Even just when it's clients that have been coming to you for months, telling you that their relatives are getting harder. Can you just talk to me? Can you keep me like level headed? What can I do to make them comfortable? When you do that, and then when it comes to that moment where you have to do that crossing over prayer, and it hits your heart so hard. It is like losing a relative. It is like losing a loved one. Anyone spiritual that says they don't feel when they're having to help somebody pass over is really not doing it right, in my opinion. Then, because doing this sort of thing is so soul lifting, but so soul destroying at the same time. Sometimes, especially some of the situations that, but we were made and chose to be who we are for a reason. Even though we look at it and think, how the hell do we deal with that? They know we can deal with that because we've got that special little bejazzle that gets us through that. You know what I mean? And I think if we wasn't this way, then we just wouldn't be who we are, guys.
Yeah.
That's why we're such influencers. That's why people like talking to us, because we're not just here giving you advice. We've been the experiences. We've witnessed and gone through these same things as you guys. We can relate to you. I've been through violence. I've been through eating disorders. I had a really bad eating disorder. I've been through suicide attempts. I've had my kids took off me. I've probably had some of the most darkest things done to me. Assaults, attacks, all sorts of things. But do you know what? It didn't break me. It might have messed my head a little bit at the time, but now it's made me this truly magical being, and I influence and uplift other people, and that makes me more open and more loving to myself, helping other people, because I've found it really hard to love myself because of what I've gone through. So doing this really makes me love myself, really makes me feel I've got a purpose, and I think I'd be lost if I didn't have it.
Yeah. What do you think, Nico? You're sitting there all quiet.
I agree. Absolutely. I think as weird as it is for a lot of us that have mental health issues or physical health issues, that we often grasp towards spirituality in one way or another as kind of a coping mechanism for everything that's going on in life. Um, and whether that's you want to feel a sense of control, you want to take the control away from yourself and give it to a higher power, however your theology works with that. But I really think that it can be a very good coping mechanism for a lot of things. And there's a very common trend with people who have near death experiences or like sudden and like severe health changes,
Yeah.
and troubles at all, where they kind of go through this cycle of spirituality where they get like more spiritual in times of crisis and then kind of like ebb back down into like what either their normal state is or an absence of spirituality, which is a very, very human thing. And it absolutely fascinates me. But I absolutely agree that I think that there's this interesting pattern that occurs with like the intersection of like mental health and grief and loss and spirituality and religion. And I think it personally is beautiful. And it's, if you want to say that religion is man made and that it's humans' coping mechanism for things that we can't explain, I'm fine with that. If
Yeah.
it's a higher power and whether that's internal or external, I'm absolutely fine with that. But it works. And I think, at least personally for me, that it's been very, very helpful. I don't think without my spirituality that I probably wouldn't be here.
Same.
Yeah.
Same way with me. How about you, Bradley? Would you be here without your spirituality?
I didn't know what spirituality was. I was just born a spiritualist. And at age of 9 onwards, I started seeing spirits. And I didn't know there was a name for it. But being a spiritualist and living a life of spirituality is what I'm familiar with. So, yeah. And also, I've been blessed with the education and the experience of knowing that there is more to life than what we see. Not everything is as it seems. Anything is possible, and there is a life outside of what we see. Other intelligent life forms exist with us in this realm. I've learned all that, and I've been blessed as well as cursed with spiritual entities. I've been blessed as well to know this information exists, and a lot of people don't know. And I understand atheists. I understand their point of view. If you've never seen a ghost or a spirit, how you ever expected to believe they even exist in the first place? I understand that.
Everybody's got the right to believe in what they want to believe in. Not everybody can be a believer, and not everybody's going to believe in other things. We're all individually different for a reason, and that doesn't make it a bad thing. That's just us. I just think the thing that lacks is respect. It shouldn't matter what path we walk, as long as we can be respectful to each other, because at the end of the day, we all have to live in this place together. And there's going to be all walks of people, all different faiths and religions, and we should all be able to live equally and comfortably, not being judgmental of each other. Life is a beautiful thing to have if you're willing to see it, and if you're willing to let the divine show you, and if you're willing to look within your heart and open your heart to who you truly are. It is a beautiful place. Yes, I'm not saying that you don't struggle here, you don't go through problems. Of course you do, but we're only human, as they say. But it's not wrong. And like Nico, there are fine lines between mental health and spirituality. But are they two things that should be criticised and looked at, and we should be criticised because we have these problems? Not really. I've got mental health issues, but I very much know my difference between my mental health and my spirituality. As I said, my mental health has helped me a lot in my spirituality. To me, my spirituality has been my savior. My spirituality is my safe home. My mum was my safe home. My spirituality has always been my number one safe home. And now I look and reside in that even more so, because I know that in that safe home, my mum is sitting there waiting and watching. So you know, it's always been my savior. It's always been the place that I've run to and felt safe, felt covered and protected, and because I've always felt very vulnerable in this world because of what I've been through. And it's only been in later life that I've started to be like, oh, what the hell? I ain't going to let this run me down anymore. I'm not going to sit behind walls and say it's not good for me to have mental health because people tell it in. I'm going to show you that I am a normal person. It doesn't matter what's wrong with me. And you know what? I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it.
You know, for me, when I walk through this life and I'm dealing with my life struggles, I have a lot of triumphs too. You know,
Yeah.
how many people can sit there and look at you and say, I have seen God, I have seen Goddess, I have been embraced, I have been loved by him. Am I crazy because I see that? You know, let's be real about, is God real? Isn't Goddess real? Am I crazy because I believe that? Am I crazy because I rejoice because I have a grandchild or even my own children? I celebrated in triumph. That was a mental boost for me. Each one of
Yeah.
those children being born, we have to look at the flip side too, the good things, the Christmases, the Yules that we go through, the celebration of birthdays of, hey, grandma's 78 this year. Let's celebrate. Let's have us a party, a Wendig, as we call it here in Iowa. Let's have that fun. It's good to let go once in a while, to
Yeah.
have a mental break. But at the
Well,
same time,
it's true.
am I crazy because I experienced through meditation? I feel the energy wrapping around me. Now, how do
No,
you
you're crazy.
that to a Christian who says their prayers, but their prayers are so low level that they're not letting God or Goddess or the divine or the Christ energy in? How can we explain to them that we're not crazy? We're just experiencing something different. Are we crazy because we're so spiritual? That we open ourselves up, we open up our chakras, we center, we ground, we go through our meditations, we step in a circle, we create, we call to the quarters. Are we crazy because we are seeing the circle being erected, we're seeing the circle being created, that we're seeing ancient ones, the ones that Abraham, how can we say it, sit there and go, oh, you're not supposed to talk to these guys because they're bad, but yet that was our biggest defenders in life, so that we could be here for Christ to come, for the Goddess to come. Are we crazy because we experience all this stuff? I don't think we are, because
No,
there's
not at all.
an order for us to experience the good with the bad, to
Yeah.
have these sad feelings. We're meant to, but that doesn't mean let it drive yourself crazy.
Where there is darkness, there is light. There is always light. Where there may be a problem, there's always something to be changed and to be sorted. It's having the ability to trust in yourself and believe in that, and to know that you've always got somebody watching your back, no matter what or how long it might take to sort a situation. Everything happens for a reason, and through that you learn. Lessons are vital.
Yeah, that's the way I believe it. That we should take time out and really look at who we are as individuals. Where do I
Go to
really
Mother Earth.
on the psychological spectrum, but also our spiritual? We have, it's like the Goddess teaches us. You got to keep one foot within the mundane, but you also got to keep one foot within the spiritual plane.
But that's why I always say go to Mother Earth and go to Mother Nature, because you're in both worlds when you do that.
Yeah, but the big problem I have with a lot of people is that they become zealots within their spirituality, but also within their mundane life. Some people say capitalism, the dollar's the God, the new God, there's no God. Then my spiritual side is saying, no, no, no. And I start become that zealot. Then all of a sudden it's like, I can't yell at people going, you're screwing up because you believe in Christ, but I also see a goddess, you know. And they're preaching just as hard at me about capitalism and Christ, and I'm sitting there going, but there's a goddess, and and I'm almost to that pinpoint where I'm yelling at them, and vice versa.
But that's where the religion is. Everybody's learned differently. They're not learned that there's a goddess in Christianity. Yeah, there's a Mother Mary and stuff like that they look at as a high energy, but they wouldn't form her as a form of a goddess or anything in Christianity, would they? That God's the higher power and the important one, and Jesus. But like that's what I'm saying. Like, religion plays a big factor in this. That's why they don't see that the aspect of the god and goddess is both important, not just one, but both, because they've not been learned that. And we can't shout and scream at them because of that, because that's not their fault. All we can do is educate, learn, and maybe it'll make them sway their mind and be like, oh, I actually do see some truth in that, and I actually believe in that. That's why I enjoy what I'm doing, because sometimes you can change people's minds that are really stuck in these like religious ways, and they're like, oh my God, I actually tried to speak to the goddess that you spoke about last night, and you know what, I did feel something. And there you go. Like, you don't push your faith on them. You allow them, like Nico said, let them come to you. Let them realize that there is something else.
We're supposed to teach by example.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to go, you're going to go to hell or you're going to go to Tartarus because you don't believe in our ways. Okay.
Yeah, no.
And people don't realize that we're not batshit crazy. Excuse my language.
We're not.
We're not crazy. Is that we have to realize is that there has to be a balance in our life of our mental health, our spirituality, and our mundane life.
We're simply living and following our faith that we love, no different to what you're doing.
Yeah.
We're following gods and goddesses that have loved and cared for us and protected us and helped us and guided us, just as you do sitting in your Christian churches. Okay. We're doing exactly the same. We might do things a little bit different to you, but you know what? We're the hearts of light. Yes, we might practice things slightly different to you, but it's all done out of goodness and out of love and out of, the respect of others and things like that. And, if there's anything I've learned about the craft is a form that is there to help you through life and to be able to benefit you in so many ways. And I don't mean benefit as in take. What I mean is there's so many aspects in life that you don't realize are so good for you, and that they present this to you. Magic, in our world, there's so many things in life and chaos that goes on, and people are constantly running around. What can we do to help ourselves? We can't do that because we can't do the magic. You can be the form of your path. You do not have to be a witch. You do not have to be a spiritual practitioner to make a little spell to make something go better in your life for you or for somebody you love or you care. It's called looking after yourself, because let's face it, in our reality, in our world today, there's a lot of higher energy, and I'm not on about the divine, but people here in society, humankind, that are not looking out for us in the way that they should be. So who has to look after us? Number one has to look after number one. Number two has to look after number two. And we have to do things to make our life better, because we're set challenges all the time and things put in front of us. It's down to us to make that decision if we're going to make our life grow and flourish, or we're going to fall and follow the idiots, as I say. Like, to me, you need to just be you, be comfortable and be happy, and realize that life is a lesson. And no matter how much darkness or evilness or bad, as you will say, is in this world, there are always outcomes to come out of that. And we are in control of what happens to us in life. It's having the audacity and the ability to see that, but use it the right way. We don't use or do what we do to be selfish, to take. We give. Okay, we take what we need to help us and we give back. We do what we're told to do. Okay, and we're all in charge of a life if you allow it to be. Okay, anyone can stand there and make a health spell, make a protection spell, make a good luck spell, find a job, get a new home. You can all do this without being a witch. It's
People do it all the time.
belief.
They do it all the
Us.
time.
Yeah.
All the time.
You know, you have that lucky penny in your
You don't need
wallet.
to come to us and ask us to do that.
Yeah.
You can do that yourself.
The
Take
lucky
control.
coin, the flowers when somebody's sick. There's so many things that people do that they
They do
don't.
it. Yeah, exactly.
their-
They do
The
already do that, but
worldview
they
is
don't realise
different
they're
on it,
using
but
it.
they still
Do
do
they?
it.
What's the
I
problem?
have a perfect thing for that. Witches call them spells. Religious people call it prayer. Spiritualists call it manifestation. Atheists may call it the placebo effect. Scientists call it the quantum physics. Everyone
I say it's
argues over what its name is, but nobody denies its existence.
It's a what? Say that again.
The witches call them spells. Religious people call it prayer. Spiritualists call it manifestation. Atheists, the placebo effect. Scientists call it quantum physics. Everyone argues over what the name is, but nobody denies its existence.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
That's what I'm saying. So many people spend their life running and worrying about things. We can't change this. We can't change. You can change anything in your life if you put your mind to it.
now I got a question to ask you guys.
Degraded. Yeah.
Does thought forms and sanity go hand in hand? Do you guys understand what I'm saying?
That
Well,
forms
say that again.
insanity?
Does thought forms and sanity go hand in hand? Can it be constructive? Because thought forms become, to me, they become magical.
Mhm.
Our thoughts help us manifest things within our lives. Within my spiritual life, my thought is what gears me toward the next thing, the next spell, the next circle word. You understand what
I
I'm saying?
think.
Mhm.
We can
I
sit there.
think that thought. I think the thought form's very important. I think it is. It is a form of magic. Of course, it is. Like, I don't think I'd be writing my fairy cards and doing my book now if I didn't have that magical thought form. You know what I mean? Like, it's definitely there, and we wouldn't be able to do half of our spells and stuff if we didn't use our thought, our imagination, and our way.
Yeah.
You know, we need that. That's how magic works. It's seeing and
Now,
manifesting it.
thought
So-
forms can be used in a positive,
Mhm.
but it can also be reversed into the negative.
Yep.
Where
It
I
It can,
sit there
yes.
and think every day, I could sit there and go, I'm worthless, I'm worthless, I'm
Yes.
worthless. And it manifests because we're a thought form. Or there's something in my closet, there's something outside. And we think that daily, nightly, and it manifests.
Well, that's
Oh yeah, definitely.
honestly one of the biggest issue or
That
the
is a mental
biggest things I come across when I
manifestation.
do cleansings and things is that rarely is it a negative spirit. It is generally a manifestation of somebody's fears or
Yeah.
stress, things like that. Their negative self-image, like they haven't cursed themselves. They have afflicted themselves and burdened themselves with their own thoughts and their own
Yeah,
negativity.
I've met a few people in my
that.
investigation like that thought they had a demonic,
Yeah.
and they weren't. It was them.
No, I'm not saying that demons aren't real. I'm just saying that it is a much rarer circumstance.
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying, Nico. I'd met a couple of people that had said, "Oh, I'm having a demonic experience," and it wasn't demonic. It was where they've been conjuring up that energy. And what you got to think is your thought is word. What you say out your mouth and what you say in your head is still a voice. You're still saying words within your head, so you're manifesting either way that you speak. So that's why we always say, be careful what you think and what you say, because it does happen. And sometimes you can't help that.
That's where I was going with this, is that
can't help it.
sometimes our word and our thought can literally make us sick-minded.
Yes.
Well, it really can feed into mental health. Because I know when I was going through psychosis, that my therapist laid out rules for me, and one of them was that I wasn't allowed to watch any horror movies. I wasn't allowed to watch the news, and that I was only to consume like positive and grounded material, because the latter was contributing to my psychosis and making things worse.
Yeah.
And so I, of course, followed the orders, and things improved. But it was astounding to me that I had never contemplated that the things that I was consuming were affecting my mental health in that way. But I had my psychosis was induced through what is the word I'm looking for? I had sleep deprivation from a side effect from PTSD. I didn't sleep for almost a month. I think maybe a couple hours every week, but I was so horribly sleep deprived that I went into psychosis.
That happens.
Mhm.
You don't get enough sleep. You literally can go
Mhm. Yeah.
off the deep end. But also on the turnkey, fasting is sleep deprivation also helps you, well, can help you step to the other side quicker.
Yeah. There's a healthy balance
Yeah.
with spirituality. If you're doing religious fasting or self-sacrifice where you're reducing sleep, things like that, they can be done. But you should always do that under the guidance of a medical professional. Make sure it's something that's healthy and safe, and that your body is capable of handling those. Because there was a pastor that tried to do the fasting of Jesus. He tried to do a 40-day fast, and he made it to day, I think, 30 before he passed away. But I've heard other stories of people who do intermittent fasting for a month at a time, and they're totally fine. But it's always one of those things. Consult a doctor. When in
Yeah.
doubt, consult a doctor. Let him know what
Yeah,
you're doing.
exactly. Yeah.
Bradley, you're being awful quiet, brother.
We're
Thank
coming
you.
to the top of the hour. We can carry on another half hour. We call it end the show now. It's up to you.
Okay. But yeah,
I don't
this
mind. We've covered a lot of ground actually discussing this topic, and it's debatable. Although we're giving out the right advice, seek a professional help.
Mm-hmm.
I would always tell a
And
person,
psychiatrists,
go to a doctor.
psychologists, parapsychologists, hypnotherapists. There's quite a few avenues you can choose if you're not satisfied with the verdict from the psychiatrist.
Well, and you
Have to
can
bear that
always,
in mind.
if you don't like your doctor, fire them, find a new one, get a second opinion, find a doctor you mesh with. I think I went through 4 or 5 therapists before I found one I liked.
Mhm.
And you can look into, at least here in the US, there's some good websites that have, they're like catalogs for therapists and things. They'll tell you if they're, you know, put blurbs about of like, these are the type of clients that I work with, like, LGBT, like pro LGBT, like spiritual, like all sorts of things. So you can find a therapist that has similar views to you, which I find very, very helpful. Because my first one was he was a retired military doctor and went into psychiatry, and he treated people with PTSD, which I have. The problem was is that he was so used to treating veterans with PTSD that he didn't know how to treat civilians who developed PTSD very well. So while he was great at mitigating veterans who have PTSD, he did quite badly with civilians. He over medicated. And I found out later down the road that I was on, I think it was almost 4 times the amount of medication that I should have been. And I kept questioning him. And I was like, hey, like I have this problem and I think it's this medication. Oh, that's a side effect of this medication. Here's another medication. And got to the point where I was taking like 15 medications. And I didn't like it. So um, I switched to a different facility and a different psychiatrist, um, who happened to be a female doctor, and she's absolutely fantastic. That lady, I've stuck with her. I've recommended her to everybody that I know if they're in need of psychiatric care. But he got me set up right, and I had never been better. Like I wouldn't say that I was unmanaged, but I was far less symptomatic from side effects and had better management and needed far less medication.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a few doctors myself, and that were like that. It was all medicine, and all this stuff. But the lady that I got, the last one, she really helped me, and I ended up going from like 7 different medications down to 1, and then officially even being took off of it in the end. And I've been clear from taking medicine for 10 years with PTSD and all of that, and through her work and her dedication and her help with me, it's helped me to get through a lot of things, and she's learnt me strategies and ways to be able to cope with what I'm going through.
Yeah, when you get the coping.
And if you don't see me for a week or so, you'll know I'm having a bit of a downer, but that's not me coping. That's my mechanism. I'm doing my tests, my training she learnt me to do, you know. And I'll be the first to say to you that never ever stop seeking medical help from professionals, guys. We can give you advice, but we are not doctors, like they're saying in the end, and we can't prevent health problems, but they possibly can. Okay, so always seek your medical help. You will always need a doctor or a mental doctor or anything like that. You're always going to need those people, despite no matter how much you might be against them, you might think they're no good. There are really good ones out there, and you know, your life and who you are and your safety is important. And sometimes, you know, us giving you advice isn't going to get you what you need. You do need to see professionals, guys. So don't ever think that what we're telling you, what we're teaching you, is a form of curing you, so you don't need to go to doctors. That is not what we're doing. We're just saying to you that both aspects are important, and do not give up on either of them.
I like the term holistic and complementary.
Yes, they both are complementary and they're both needed. Yeah.
Where, like, if I would recommend something, it's not for you to stop what you're doing. It's, hey, if this is something that doesn't mess with everything else, this might be cool. Or here's a meditation that might help, like, keep you centered, and, you know, that'll help you mentally process things that are going on. Or, you know, there's all kinds of stuff. Like, you can do banishment rituals to banish ill health or to banish like symptoms, and but at the same point, I'm not going to tell you to stop going to a doctor if you're doing them.
No, definitely not.
It's the cherry on top of the cake, not the cake.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like Brown says, in the Trinity, the Holy Spirit has the traits of a woman.
Yeah, she's known as Sophia.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah, I think he froze. I thought the whole thing froze for a second, but no, it's just Mr. Bradley. Bradley, come back.
Yeah. Hello.
Do we need to pull out the Ouija board? Can you hear us? Are we connecting to you?
Earth calling Bradley.
We can feel your presence. Can you reach out?
Now,
hello out there. Can you hear me?
I do want to point out to people, you can be spiritual and not be crazy because you have unorthodox beliefs other than Christianity. You know, be true to yourself and what you believe in. Oh, he'll be back.
Oh, and I agree.
Yeah.
I want to add on that, and even if you do have mental health issues, like I have PTSD, depression, anxiety, I've had psychotic episodes in the past, that if you are interested in pursuing spirituality or you are spiritual, that you shouldn't let that defer you from it. No, if you had points in psychosis that you need to pause your spiritual practice for your safety and your well-being, do it. Like, you can always come back to it.
Yeah.
And
you're not going to be judged.
There are circumstances that some people may enter where, you know, they need to get themselves right before they can get back into it for their well-being. I had a lady who was, not the lady, my ex, their previous partner ended up they got diagnosed with bipolar. And before they got diagnosed, they went through spiritual psychosis. And for them, they had this like kind of manic episode where they were super energetic and like super confident, and they thought they could do absolutely everything. And then the next week, he thought he was the reincarnation of Jesus. And we were concerned, like, what the, like, this is weird. This is like, what's going on with you, dude? Like, what the hell? And that we were all his disciples, and then, like, just absolutely bonkers. And then, so we contact his girlfriend, and it's like, hey, something's going on with him. Like, you should get him to see a doctor. He has a negative reaction to her confrontation about him going to the doctor, and he continues down the spiral and lights his car on fire in his driveway. Reports it stolen, and then somehow, or supposedly, and I don't know if I believe this because he was in the middle of psychosis, claims to have hitchhiked to Kentucky, was gone for like 2 weeks, and then somehow came back. But phone and wallet were in the car, like no way to contact him. Dude disappeared for like 2 weeks and showed back up. Girlfriend immediately had him institutionalized, and he started getting the help that he needed. And 10 years later, the guy's married, has kids, is totally functional and stable on medication, but he had a mental health crisis. And all of us, we knew enough about spiritual practices and things to be like, there's something wrong here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's scary, and it can be subtle or more subtle than that. But I encourage everybody to look up. There's a thing called spiritual psychosis. Look it up, know what it is, as well as the BITE model, which is how to identify a cult. Those are two things that I think anybody in a spiritual practice should 100% have references to. When something seems weird, consult those, because you can save yourself a lot of struggle. Whether you need to disengage from somebody because they may be in spiritual psychosis and won't seek help, or they become aggressive from it, or somebody's in a cult or a victim of a cult.
Yeah, no, definitely know the difference and be cautious. It's like us in witchcraft. If you got somebody who's residing over, a priestess or a priest who's residing over a coven or a spiritual group who tries to take control of your life and your monies, be cautious, be wary. If they start telling you what you can and cannot do, say later, Tater, I'm out of here.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Because I believe in this, especially within our coven, freely we come and freely we go. I ain't going to ask for money. I don't want to be given money. I don't want to be given gifts. I don't want none of that. But
and the only time I ask for money is like, hey, we're doing this big event. Like, can y'all, if you can, like, this is what the materials are going to cost for it. Pass around the hat. If you can, great. If not, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's one of those trying to recoup the costs. But other than that, no. Like, candles are expensive, guys.
I've watched Christian churches kick people out.
Yeah.
Church.
I saw
they don't get money. But
there was
yet,
a news article.
These people need that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, there was a news article this week, I think out of Georgia or something, where a pastor held his whole congregation hostage and demanded that everybody, or that he wouldn't unlock the doors until they tithed $40,000.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there like, this man's like, that's terrifying. Like, he locked everybody in a building for God knows how long, until they paid him $40,000.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It is nuts. We would not do that in our ways and things like that. And like they both said, even if you do suffer with mental health and stuff like that, you don't have to stop being spiritual. You will learn when to not do it. Like obviously, like for me, when I'm in bad places, like if my headspace isn't good, if I'm feeling a bit depressed, a little bit low, I won't do my card readings and do things like that for anybody else. I might do it for myself to help me to get a bit of a picture, a vision on what's going on with me, and then ask for the help. But I will not help other people when I'm in that situation. I will not go live or talk physically or online to anybody when I'm in them shapes and forms of mind. If I'm depressed, because obviously, like Nico, I've got borderline personality disorder, and I've got post-traumatic stress disorder. I also suffer from anxiety and depression. So I have a lot of things that I'm mixed with and that I have to deal with. But I've got to that point in my life now where I understand my mental health. Yes, I still have my up and down days, but I know when to do things, when things are getting too much. Yeah, maybe you need a little bit of a break, Sherry. And 9 times out of 10, my spirits and that will say, Sherry, slow down and stop for a bit. They always do because they know as well.
There's self-care
So
too.
always just be comfortable and be happy to be you guys, and don't give up on your spirituality because you get mental health. It isn't your spirituality that's giving you mental health; it's life. And just learn to look after yourself more. Listen to yourself. Listen to what your body needs. That's the most important thing.
Exactly. When you get in those states, like self-care. Honestly, I think self-care should be a part of everybody's practice, whether you're a witch or not. There is a book, I believe it's called The Witch's Guide to Self-Care, which is a fantastic book. But when you're going through anything, be kind to yourself. Draw yourself a nice hot shower, bath. You can ritualize it and, put pretty flowers, do a milk bath, do a salt scrub, do a
little
hair
bit of
mask.
therapy, water therapy.
Treat yourself well.
But there's so many different ways that you can do it, though, isn't there, Nico? Like you can even. I know it might sound stupid, but I do it all the time. Just little notelets with a love art. You are amazing. I'll sit and look at myself in the mirror and go, "You are strong. You are powerful. You can get through this. You have been through darkness and you're in the light. You're loved. You're honored." Like just giving yourself like positive messages helps your body. The more you think negatively, the more it's going to impact you. You need to be able to put that negative to the back and bring the positive forward. Not ignore the negative, because ignoring it is not going to make it go away, but at least putting something to help you to come forward. And there's so many strategies you can use, like Nico and me are saying. You can talk to yourself in the mirror. You can do little love notes. You can talk to people that you trust and you reside in, people that really make you feel like you're loved and you're appreciated and listen to you. There's so many ways that you can get self-help. Not everybody going through a bit of a breakdown needs a mental health doctor. Okay, you just need a bit of self-love and a little bit of understanding. But if it gets to that point where you're like, oh my God, I can't cope with this, I can't get out my head, then yes, go to the doctors. Always go to the doctors if you're worried. But if you know that it's just a little hiccup and you just need a little bit of a boost, just giving yourself positive words, putting positive music on, doing positive things that you enjoy, going out for a walk, doing anything that's just going to lift you and get you away from that chaos for a little bit. It's self-love and self-care is the most important thing in life. It's what helps you to. It also helps you to establish if there is something more deeper going on by doing that. Because if you're doing everything to try and love yourself and you're still seeing there's a problem, go to your doctors, because that might be that you need that little extra push to help you.
And for anybody that's like, you live in America and the insurance systems, if you cannot afford to see a therapist or anything like that, there are resources available. Most major cities have a crisis health center that is free.
We've got it here too,
if you live in a college town and you're under 26, the college campuses have free therapy. Some jobs, as part of their insurance program, have free therapy appointments. I know when I worked at the senior center, we had, I think it was 6 free therapy visits a year. There's LGBT resources. You know, there's the LGBT suicide hotline, the regular suicide hotline. There's the trans help hotline, the veteran suicide hotline. Um, there's your local religious services, your high priests, your priestesses, the
There's a
church.
lot of people.
You know, there's trained crisis counselors, and a lot of clergy members are trained crisis counselors. There's, you know, programs like AA, MAA, and that they have crisis counselors and spiritual advisors that are within those that are meant to help with those. And there's support groups. There's PTSD support groups. There's mental health support groups.
Good
There's
Samaritans.
Good Samaritans,
There's so
therapy,
many.
animal
So
therapy
many.
visits. There's so many things.
Even
out
grief
there.
people
Yeah.
if you've lost somebody and that, there's even people on hotlines you can phone up just to talk about that as well, guys. Like
We have
there's people for everybody.
we have a
you know.
widowers
Yeah.
brunch, if I remember right, that meets
Oh,
at
Bradley's back.
a breakfast place out here, where there's a group that they go out if you've lost a spouse, and you can join
Yeah.
the group, and they all go out for Sunday brunch, and they talk. And, like, there's so many resources.
Now,
Yep, there is.
one topic that we have not, and we're getting close to the end of the show, is suicide. That is a purveyor of people who believe in God, but yet for some reason they get it in their head that life is not worthy to live. They become mentally ill somehow, and usually it's because of their own thoughts. You know, things aren't going good in life, blah blah blah. And a lot of times we don't realize that some people have it a lot worse. You know, they do, and they end their lives. You know, I've had a couple of my friends who committed suicide because one, either they took so much meth that they started hallucinating and they killed themselves, or they just don't care about life no more because it treated them so crappy.
There's a lot of reasons.
How can we as a society deal with this? You know, this plague of, life's hard. You know, it just dealt me a really bad hand. How do we deal with people that want to commit suicide? You know,
Ultimately, I think it goes back to, I think everybody should have a base education of, like, what are the, signs that somebody's depressive, or that, notice those symptoms and reach out, be a friend, things along those lines, invite somebody out. If they're depressed and they're like, everything's horrible, if you can convince them to come out, involve them. In honesty, that's one of the most helpful things that I've had when I've been in depressive episodes, is that I will tell you that I don't want to do something, but if you drag me out, I may not, like, you'll at least temporarily pull me out of, like, thought process and things. And, like, I may not have the best time in the world, but I'm out of the headspace. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not
It's like
alone.
an escape, and it's an escape for a short period of time. Yeah.
And,
You
like,
know,
that's super helpful. There's plenty of things you can do, but
so many different reasons why people do this, and I can't wrap my head around it. I really can't.
It's weird for me. So go ahead.
Go on, Nico.
As somebody who's had suicide attempts and who suffers with depression, it's complicated for me, because I had times where I absolutely 100% attempted to take my own life. And looking back on it now, I have this weird mixture of feelings of, I understand why in that situation I thought that was a suitable answer, but I am so thankful that it didn't work, and that the one thing that I tell a lot of people is if they have depression and they're contemplating suicide is to wait a year. At least wait a year. I can't necessarily, I can try to talk somebody out of it. I can do everything from the book, but give it a year and reevaluate it is one of the best advice I can give somebody. Because a lot changes in a year. You can change your circumstances, you can change your emotional states. You know, something may come and change your life. And I followed that advice, and I think the last time, if I remember right, the last attempt I had was 2012. And that's around the time where I got diagnosed with all of my mental health issues. I was suffering from agoraphobia, which is essentially you're shut in. I was afraid of leaving the house. And that was a side effect of my PTSD. I thought that the events that caused my PTSD were going to continue to happen, and that I only felt safe inside my home. So I wouldn't leave. And that was difficult. But here I am over a decade later, and I've done everything that people told me I'd never do. And I'm so grateful that I'm here. But it's one of those things where looking back on it, it saddens me that I was at such a state that I was so stressed and so in so much pain that I could even contemplate doing that. But I'm so proud of where I am now. So I absolutely understand where people can hit that breaking point, and it deeply saddens me for anybody that does succeed or anybody that is going through those same feelings. But there are so many ways and so many good things to keep going for.
Yeah, and I've been like I've been through the same thing. I've gone through suicide. I've also lost people to suicide as well. Am I proud of trying to take my life quite a few times? No, I'm not proud, but I'm not gonna sit there and say that I'm sorry for the way that I felt at the time. I was going through a lot of things, and I was in my most darkest places, and everywhere I turned, I could not escape from what I was going through. And the only way I see was to escape life. At that time, I was talking to my higher power, but as much as they were trying to speak to me, I wasn't hearing them at that time. My mental health had took me that badly that that's the only way I felt I could get out of it. And I attempted to drown myself. I attempted to walk in front of a lorry at one point as well. I attempted to try and jump off of a bridge in front of a train, but then changed my mind. So it made me change my mind. There's been a few times I've attempted to do things many years ago. I think the one that scared me the most was the one when I tried to drown myself, and I heard my son's voice come to me from my spirit. My spirit pretended to do my son's voice, made me come up out of the water. And that's when I realized, that's when I started to wake up, and I realized that, do you know what? After she said to me, like, your life is valued and you are loved, you need to see your worth and how much you will hurt people if you was to leave. And it was from that moment when I cried that I released everything that I was going through, and I was like, I won't do that again. I did start to value life then, but at the time I was in such a dark place. I didn't see any other way out. I was sick of feeling the pain. I was sick of being constantly in fear, not being able to escape the fear. It would consume you. And like Nico, I am glad that I have my life now, and I do value it. Am I going to sit there and say that my life is perfect? No. You know, like recently for the last 7 months, you know, I've been struggling really badly with mum. I have had suicidal thoughts, but I have not done it. There's a big difference. I haven't done it. I've just thought about it because I've just been feeling crappy. But the power, the strength of people around me, the power and strength in myself, the things that I've been educated and learned about, my spirituality, my promises to everybody is just so much more valuable And my life, I do value it. It's just sometimes you just find yourself a little bit lost. You don't really know which way to turn. And, you know, recently, yes, I haven't done anything to myself, guys. I won't do anything to myself. But I have had a few moments where I felt like that. And I've been like, please just take me from this pain. Like, how much more pain can I take? I lost my nan and granddad a year and a half ago. And then you took my mum. I'm going through all of this problem. I've got all this weird stuff. I've got all this fear that I'm going to get the same illness as my mum had and that I'm going to die. Like, I've got all this stuff. Because when you've got mental health as well, you'll find that you overthink everything and you worry about everything. It brings my anxiety on. Just sitting on here today before Bradley went live, I started getting heart palpitations from my anxiety because I was like, oh, please don't say the wrong things, Bradley, because it would have triggered my mental health off and my anxiety. I was already feeling that anxiety. And that's how I look. This is how I know. That's why you've not really seen me doing very many shows now, because I know that I'm not completely ready to be that way. I'm lost still. But I thought that, you know, I'll be on this show because I can relate to this show and I'm going through it and have been going through it since I was like 16 years old.
Well, there's nothing wrong with taking a mental health break or a spiritual break to get things sorted out. Like, we absolutely have to take time to make sure that we're better. You go with the saying that an empty cup can't fill a kettle.
And exactly. And through those experiences and stuff, I do help a lot of people that have been suicidal. I have people that come to me. I'm kind of like an agony aunt sort of thing, but for people that are suicidal. So I'll sit there and speak to them. I can't tell them how to feel, but I just say to them, give them like positive, uplifting wording to them, saying about they should value their life, that they're loved by many, even though that they don't realize that life is so much more than you taking your life. Do you not realize your presence and your importance? If you was not loved, then why am I here talking to you? Why am I helping you if you're not loved? Like, I know that you don't see a way out of this darkness, but there is. I am somebody that's been through this myself, so I can tell you can get through that darkness. And I think it really does help when you go through the same things. It helps them to listen more. Can you stop someone from committing suicide? No, you can't. But I at least can sit there. If I've had a few people that I've spoke to, and I spoke to for quite a few years, they ended up being successful. I'm not going to say their names, but you know, it's really upsetting. But for years I spoke to them. But you know what? I got that comfort and that love knowing that I was that friend that they didn't have at that time, and that I gave them those extra years. Did I stop what they wanted to happen to them? No, I didn't. But I was that friend when they needed them, and they're out of that suffering now. Like, I know a lot of people say that suicide is selfish, and it is selfish, I guess, like to a lot of people, because you take that love and that energy, that power away from your family. People hurt, but I don't see suicide as a selfish thing. I don't. You don't know what that person's going through at that time. You don't know the things that go on behind closed doors. Is it the right way to think and to come out? No, it's not right to take your life, guys. But I'm not going to sit here and say that it's wrong for you to be feeling the way that you feel, because it's not. You know, we don't know your situations. They don't know our situations. And I just pray to God that anybody feeling like that, please reach out to other people and to people that can help you. Don't not value your life. You're very important and very special people.
Absolutely.
You may not have anybody in life, but if you're in a community like this where people come together and talk, then we obviously care about you because we're doing these shows. You could have only got to reach out to us. Don't suffer alone. I think that's really important to me. Like, mental health is one of my big things. Mental health and suicide is really big for me. My uncle committed suicide. You need to.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you so much thank you all three of you for your input. You made it a 2-hour show. Thank you very much. I've got to close the show because my phone's going to die in a minute.
Suicide kind of as it's a vicious cycle. So if somebody takes their life, they then plant that seed of depression and grief in everyone that knew them, and then seed starts to grow and fester, and then through your actions, you've now inflicted multiple people with the same illness that you had.
Exactly. Yeah. So
And
please think
it's
before you act.
is that it in a way it's a selfish thing, but like people's feelings are valid. But to
In
consider
that
your
way, yes, it is selfish.
yeah, to consider your actions, that it does it, you know, while it may seem like the correct decision, you affect so many people and more people than you probably realize, where it's not just your friends and your family. Like, you know, you're regular at a restaurant and that server knows your name,
Shops, yeah.
and your shops and pets, all kinds of things. Like, these are people
Everywhere.
and everywhere that, you know, will miss you. And that's something to consider.
Yeah.
Just
Before
value
we-
life, guys. Value life and think before you act, and reach out if you need it. Okay, guys, you're loved, you're important, you're special, and don't ever forget your worth.
Absolutely. And in Christianity, death by suicide is heavily condemned. In paganism, for my experience as a Norse pagan, it is not a condemnable death in Norse paganism.
No,
You go to the same places the people that die of old age and disease go, which is Helheim, which is our standard afterlife. It's beautiful. The fields, you know, your standard afterlife. You never want no food, no drink, endless celebrations, joy, happiness, pain free. It's not the afterlife that Christians contemplate for people who die by suicide. It's not fire and brimstone and punishment.
no, it's not.
And I had a friend who passed from suicide, and the pastor took it as a moment to do a fire and brimstone speech to condemn the actions of suicide, and it was highly inappropriate. And it's like, well, I know that that is a thing in their faith. That is not something you say to a mother who just lost her child.
Yeah.
That's not something you say to a group of people who gathered to
Remember someone.
express their grief and remembrance for somebody.
Yeah. I totally agree. We're coming up at the top of the hour, toward the end.
Yeah,
of the
my phone's going to die. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Thunder. Thank you, Nico. Thank you, Sherry, Brett, Willow, for appearing on my show. It's been a pleasure to have you all near me. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you for all your thoughts, your questions.
Yeah.
And until next time, it's been a pleasure having you all near us. Thank you for supporting us. Goodbye.
Hey, Bradley, before
Let's
you
be-
cut us off, let me say one thing to everybody out there. If you feel like suicide, get a hold of somebody, talk to somebody, seek help. Don't try to live life on your own. If
Call
you
your
need
country
help,
crisis lines.
yell
Don't suffer
loud.
alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you all. Blessings. May the God of
Blessings.
Sweetness be with you. Love, peace, and hey, life is like chicken grease. Just slide your way through it. Find your way
Yep.
through it.
Thank you.
Like
Thank
that.
you.
Brace
Blessed
yourself,
be.
hold fast,
Blessings,
and
guys.
serve the cosmos. Goodbye, everyone.
Great Goddess, I am so thankful to have you guiding.